It's been extremely busy over the last couple of weeks for severe weather. In fact, the National Weather Service is still doing surveys on the major tornado outbreak back on March the 31st, and they are now up to 123 confirmed tornadoes during that outbreak. And that plus sign means they are not done, folks. They still have surveys to do. That actually puts it now top 5 of the most historic tornado outbreaks in U.S. history. And here's the list that you just do not want to make. And that was unfortunately a very dangerous tornado outbreak day. And of course, the next day that actually continued off into the east, where they in fact now up to a 13 confirmed tornadoes during that outbreak up there in the Northeast, and rare tornadoes for April timeframe along the coast here in New Jersey and even into Delaware, folks. And then we had another outbreak back on the 4th time frame, and they are now currently up to 11 confirmed tornadoes during that event. And of course, yesterday we had more tornadoes, and then today things finally settle down. We could definitely take a break on the severe weather front. That's the stalled frontal boundary that's going to be draped across really from portions of the southern plains here all the way up here into the portions of the Northeast. This is more of a wind event. It's not really a tornado threat today. These are just the slight risk for some higher wind gust for that region. But if we take it beyond that, things really start to settle down in a big way, because look at this, folks. For Easter, for Monday, for Tuesday, for Wednesday, for Thursday, there's nothing across the United States. That is a good sign to see. So we could all use a break for this active time frame we've seen over the last couple of weeks. But what we're gonna have to be dealing with now is just some extremely heavy rain draped across the coast. That's that cold front that actually brought a lot of the severe weather in the dry line, the very active dry line. But now it's just stalled out here in portions of the deep south here into Texas. And then you just get like these overrunning setups, and we're getting some heavier rains. In fact, they've got flood watches lit up across this region, so they're going to be expecting several inches of rain as this just keeps training over the same areas for today into tonight time frame. If you look at the overall precipitable water index, you can actually see where the dry air is. I mean, that's basically a very steep demarcation line of where all the moist soupy air mass is, and then all the drier air. So it's pretty hard pressed to get rain in this type of atmosphere. But further south, that's that boundary that's just elongated and really just kind of training over the same area. So there are going to be, getting some flash flooding concerns. Here's the latest update from the HRRR model going just over the next 48 hours. So we could be picking up a good maybe even 3 to 5 inches in portions of central Texas down there in the Austin area. And with that rain, in fact, you're going to be pretty cool for April standards. I mean, the highs down there are only in the mid 50s for central Texas, folks. That is chilly for further south. But yeah, there's the heavier rain they're going to have to be dealing with in all of Louisiana, much of the central and southern portions of Texas, getting into southern portions of Arkansas, as well as into Mississippi and western Tennessee. A little bit lighter amounts as you go a little bit further north, but still some heavier rains to deal with, even into the Carolinas, and those extend into portions of Jersey into Delaware, again with just more heavy rain of that stalled frontal boundary for that region. But things actually kind of get interesting with that stalled frontal boundary, because that's actually going to be shifting off into the southeast. So by the time we get into your Saturday time frame, parts of Texas are going to finally get a break. Really, parts of Arkansas and Louisiana. Now that heavier rain will shift off into a good gradient in portions of the southeast. So areas into Alabama, back into Georgia, into the Carolinas. You're going to have to be dealing with those heavier rain showers. But for the rest of the country, you're going to be experiencing a really nice Easter weekend. We got a lot of nice weather for a good part of the country. I know a lot of time want to spend a lot of time with the family with Easter coming up on Sunday. And Sunday looks good as well, but down in the Gulf, they got a lot of sea surface anomalies are extremely high for this time of year. And whenever you get a little low pressure center, especially a cold front, try to drift into the Gulf of Mexico, that's going to take advantage of some of those warmer sea surface temperature anomalies. And things could get a little interesting, down there in the Gulf of Mexico by the time we get into the middle of the week. So if we take a look at the setup, going into Tuesday timeframe, it's still pretty clear for a good part of the country. We're going to have what they call a zonal flow that comes across. There's not much lift in that type of atmosphere. So much of the area, you're going to get a break for really an extended period of time. The only area of concern is really into the deep south of where that just kind of that stalled frontal boundary. And now that low pressure is going to be kind of drifting into the Gulf of Mexico. And you see even on Tuesday, it's starting to activate and try to, get this low pressures trying to lower some of the pressures down there in the Gulf of Mexico. And it's going to be taking advantage of these warmer waters. So these areas are going to be, pinwheeling back into the coastal regions and on land now with, again, more heavy rain extending now into portions of Florida and back into southern portions of Georgia. But as we get into your Wednesday and going into that time frame, that cold front stalls out, right? It doesn't make it any further south than that. Now it starts to back up as a warm front. So as it starts to back up as a warm front, that's when you have to start looking at little lower pressures, especially on the tail end of these low pressure centers or these stalled frontal boundaries that stall out in the Gulf of Mexico. So things that we'll keep our eye on this, but here's the setup headed into that Tuesday, Wednesday time frame. We've got to know the trough. We've seen it relentless amount of times. We've got to know the trough that's going to be entering the Pacific Northwest. That's going to keep them a little bit more unsettled. That's going to keep them on the cooler side, on the rainier side, and then you still have snow to talk about in the higher elevations. But you got a pretty good ridge that's going to be building across a good part of the country, and much warmer conditions are going to be extending for a good part of the country as well. But underneath, you got that low pressure. So whenever you have a ridge over the top, that lowers the pressure underneath. And so we're going to start seeing these pressures anomalies start to lower down there into the Gulf of Mexico. And you put a low pressure down there, that could try to get its act together. So by the time we head into your, say, Wednesday and your Thursday time frame, we've got about 1,003 millibar low pressure. Now, don't get ahead of yourself. I don't think we're going to have any type of tropical type feature of Arlene or anything like that. But we got to be lucky it's April and not like in the middle of hurricane season, because this is the type of setup that you kind of typically watch for this time of year to help, once you get a stalled frontal boundary into the Gulf and you have a ridge over the top, that just spells trouble, and you can really rapidly deepen that low pressure. But the good thing is it's only April, but we're still going to have a low pressure just sitting there. So on top of the rain that you're going to be getting for the next couple of days, now you got that low pressure reactivating things again down there in the Gulf, and then it just kind of hangs off the coastline there down there in New Orleans and a good part of Mobile into the Florida Panhandle. Those regions are going to be seeing some more heavier rain extending into that region. You can actually see it on the precipitable water index. It kind of looks like some dry air filtering in on the south side, and you can actually see a little bit of spin action happening over land there. So there's definitely areas where it could start to see subtle signs, but it's not going to turn anything tropical or anything like that. But it doesn't make a difference. It's going to be still a big time heavy rain producer as you go, especially into that Wednesday, Thursday, and really into Friday time frame of next week. So let's break this thing down for you. So if we kind of look at some of the wind gust, there's these two areas of concern that you have that stalled frontal boundary and into the Gulf of Mexico backing up as a warm front. So you've got two areas of concern back here further just south of the Florida Panhandle, but you also have another area because that cold front draped across Florida out here off across the southeast, south of South Carolina. And you can see these winds. These are gusts, folks. These are gusts. They could be 30-40 miles an hour sitting out there in the middle of the Gulf of Mexico. And off here off the southeast coast, again, 40, possibly even 50-mile-per-hour wind gust sitting in offshore, and that's going to pump in some of that heavier precipitation inland. So here's the setup going into Thursday. And this, again, and we got to thank our lucky stars, this is only April and not in the middle of hurricane season, because the ridge over troubled waters is what you would typically see for a rapid development further south in the Gulf, especially with those sea surface anomalies so high. But again, it's only April, but that doesn't change the game, because you're still going to get some heavier rains down there in that region. And then we'll be looking for another trough that's going to be coming in further in off the west coast. That is going to be taking advantage of maybe some more instability back into possibly some more severe weather, at least the beginning stages of hints again by the time we get into next weekend. So let's look at this. Let's look at the breakdown of maybe some precipitation amounts from that area of low pressure from that Wednesday to Friday morning time frame, the 14th. So yeah, we're looking at several more inches of rain, and could be looking at more flash flood watches down here in this region, complements of that low pressure center. So this is not including what you're going to be seeing today and tomorrow from that stalled frontal boundary. This is adding to those totals back into a good part of New Orleans, Mississippi and Alabama, get into Georgia, pretty much all of Florida here, and then also get into the Carolinas and North Carolina with that very and that low pressure center just kind of sitting and putting inland. But by the time we head into your weekend time frame, but like next weekend, we're going to be starting to look at our eyes again for possibly a little bit more severe weather trying to enter back in the picture after we have a break for a good week. I'm not really expecting hardly anything besides the heavier wind gust today up in the Northeast. After that, things start to settle down in a big way. But look at the ensemble members on the overall 500 millibar. Again, we got a little bit of more of a trough, a little bit of kink in the hose again. That's going to be coming across the Texas Panhandle and lifting upwards. And where you got that lift, it's going to be taking advantage of some higher Cape values. If we look at the probability of some little bit higher Cape values by the time we head into that next weekend, say the 15th time frame, these are just areas of concern going, looking out ahead, because things are fairly quiet right now on the weather front. But these are things that they're just looking out ahead. But going into next weekend, we got to be a little bit more concerned again. We could be on the face of a little bit higher precipitation amounts lifting further back up into the Central Plains, as well as severe weather, because you look at some of these dew points rising again back into a good part of central and eastern 2/3 of Texas, back into Oklahoma again, back into a good part of Kansas, as well as into Missouri here. Look at the dew points extending all the way in the mid 50s back into Iowa again. So we're probably gonna have to be concerned about a little bit of a severe weather, especially with that trough that's going to be really inundating for back again. You kind of gets this look again, right? It kind of gets this look of this trough out west and then ridge out east. So that usually spells trouble for possibly more severe weather. But it's a ways away, but it's something to just kind of keep an eye on as we go through next week. But here's the breakdown on the rain front, because we're going to get some heavier rains, guys. I mean, for a good part of the country, it's going to be clear skies. It's going to be, not too much happening for across a good part of the country besides the extreme portions of the Pacific Northwest. But where that stalled frontal boundary and then the beginning stages of that low pressure center, just on the blend of models, yeah, very heavy rains really draped across central and southern Texas, good part of Louisiana and southern portions of Arkansas, into Mississippi, and as well as into Tennessee, back into Alabama and to Georgia and the Carolinas, especially into Florida here. But notice it's dry across the middle of the country. But if we add in to those Friday, Saturday, Sunday timeframe coming up next weekend, we start to see more precipitation kind of filling in the middle of the country. right? And so that kind of gives you an idea of maybe what's to come with some heavier rains moving it back in the picture, and the possibility of some of those stronger thunderstorms might be turning again. At least some severer storms might be entering back in the picture by the time we get into the middle of the month, heading into next weekend. So I appreciate you guys watching. Do like this video, definitely hit the subscribe button, and catch me in the next update where I protect you before and after the storm.